Hey, good morning, Camp Canopy virtual campers. Brad Perkins here, amateur uh, bird watcher, bird photographer, wildlife photographer. So today we're going to go through some stuff here on bird identification, bird watching. Um, I used the term birder a couple of seconds ago there. That's what the kind of sport of bird identification is called. So if you're a birder, you're somebody who likes to get out there and find as many birds as you can. So anyway, we're going to go through some of the basics. And so we'll talk about the use of binoculars, the use of books um, for identification. Might talk a little bit about cameras. The other thing we're going to do then today is I will show you some pictures that I've taken of different birds that you might see at Camp Canopy if you were out there this year. Hopefully next year when we get back out there, you'll be able to see them out there. So we're going to start off with a couple of things that are really necessary for doing bird watching. First off, for identification of birds, very important to have a couple of good field guides. So there's a lot of them out there. I'll show you one here, National Geographic's Field Guide to the Birds of North America. But there's a lot of different bird guides out there. Of course, you can open them up anywhere, and pages full of pictures, descriptions, that kind of stuff. So I recommend getting a good field guide. And again, there's a lot of different ones out there: Kaufman, Sibley, Peterson, the National Geographic. And they cover most of the birds in North America, or you can get them for specific other locations. Another one that I've got a couple of are really specific ones. So this one here is the Stokes Field Guide to Warblers. So that's the only thing that's really in this field guide is just the warblers. So it's very detailed. Got a couple others like that on shorebirds and birds from different regions of the country. So um, a lot of them out there you can get, but very important that helps with that, with the bird ID. So another thing is most of us carry our cell phones around, even when we go out to the woods. There's a lot of good bird identification apps that you can get for your cell phone. Kind of hard to show that on a cell phone right now, so I'm not going to mess with that, but some of them are free. Some of them you have to pay a little bit for. One of the unique things about the cell phone apps, if you're carrying them, not only do they have the pictures and the histories and the locations, that type of thing, but they also have the bird calls on them. At least most of the apps do. So that way, if you're out there and you hear a bird and you're not sure exactly, what it is, you think you might know what bird it is, you can always pull it up, play that app real quietly in your ear so you can hear it and not disturb the birds, and figure out whether that's really what you're seeing. And the important thing about bird calls, and we'll go through some of those today too, is that oftentimes, when we're walking out in the woods or we're walking the fields and stuff, we will hear a lot of birds that we won't see, especially from this time of the year forward when the leaves are on the tree. So I may be out there hiking and I'll hear a lot more birds than I'll see. But if I hear them, it gives me the opportunity then to stay in that area and look for them closely because I might know what it is and I want to see it. Or maybe I've heard that sound before, but couldn't figure out what it was. This gives me that opportunity. So bird songs are almost every bit as important as identifying by sight. So a couple other things that we need if we really want to get into bird watching is binoculars. We can't see most of these birds, especially the small ones, with the naked eye and actually be able to tell what they are because oftentimes they're in the tops of the trees, that type of thing. So we're going to talk just a little bit about binoculars. I'm going to show you a couple different pair here. Here's a small pair that we keep around the house for looking at stuff out on our bird feeders, that type of thing. But all binoculars come with, it has two numbers on here. So you'll see right here in the middle, it says 8 by 32 waterproof binoculars. But that 8 by 32 or 8x32, the important part of those numbers, the first number, the 8, is the relative power of the binoculars or how much they magnify something. So this will bring something in 8 times closer than what it actually looks like. So the majority of good bird watching binoculars range from a power of 7 to a power of 10. So you'll see a lot of common numbers: 8 by 32, 7 by 35, 10 by 42. So those 7, 8, 10, those are the power, those are the magnification. The second number, the 32 in this case, is the diameter in millimeters of the objective lens, and that's the lens that's gathering the light. So the bigger that number, the bigger the light capacity of those binoculars. So, I have a little pair of 10 by 32s, which have a lot of power, very little light comes into them. So they're really difficult to use in low light conditions. So I prefer something myself. In fact, I've got a pair here on my chest right now. These are 10 by 42s, so they're pretty powerful. 10 is pretty powerful, but they've got a bigger objective lens, so I get more light, into the viewing area. It makes things show up much brighter. Now, if you get too much bigger than that, you start getting at a 1050 or above. The binoculars are so big that they're hard to hold steady, and so if they're not holding steady, you're not going to be able to see things clearly in a distance. So, again, recommend anything from a 7 by 35 up to a 10 by 42 or even a 10 by 50 is, some people use that. There are bigger ones out there. They're just hard to hold still, or you're going to pay for image stabilization in them into the thousands of dollars. So speaking of the cost of binoculars, you can get usable binoculars for less than $100 if that's the way you want to start. You can also spend $3,000 or $4,000 for the high-end binoculars. But there are a lot of things in between there. There's some really good binoculars in the $200 to $500 range that will last you for many, many years. I had a pair that I used for 25 years. I still have them, but I finally upgraded this past year to something with a little better glass, a little better optics coatings on them, which just give me a lot more distinction in color, quality, and light. So anyway, that's one thing to get started there. The other thing I told you, we'll be showing you some pictures. So a lot of people like to get pictures of birds and other wildlife and animals when they're out there. And so if you watch National Geographic or the Science Channel, any of those, and you see these guys out there with these just humongous cameras with lenses this big around and however, that long, whatever, those are big. You can't carry them around the woods very well if you're out hiking and stuff, but you do get phenomenal quality pictures with those. Instead, what I use are these super zoom point and shoot type cameras. This one here, if you watch the lens barrel here, you'll see it goes in and out, and that's what creates the zoom function of this camera. So there are several of these out there. They're not very big. You can see I'm just holding it in one hand. And there's different manufacturers that make these cameras that range in power from, say, 25x up to over 100x, which means that they'll bring in stuff anywhere from 25 times to 100 times closer than what it really is. So again, they're kind of a point and shoot camera. They don't have the capabilities of adjustments that some of the other cameras do. But you'll see some of the pictures here, and I've got a lot even better than the ones I'm going to show you today from using small cameras like this that, could be purchased in the few $100 range instead of several $1,000 range. So something to keep in mind for, $300 or $400, you can get a really good super zoom camera that'll get you a lot of good pictures. So with that being said, we'll talk to you about how to use binoculars just a little bit there. Sorry, I almost forgot. So a couple of important things with binoculars. First thing is that our eyes are usually a little different. Each one can be a little bit different, so we need to adjust the binoculars themselves to match up to our eyes so that everything's in focus when we're using them. So there's a couple different dials on your binoculars. So right here is a big center dial, and this is the thing that moves the barrels in and out and keeps things in focus. But there's also let's see, it's on the right-hand side here. There's another dial right here, and this is called a diopter dial. You see there isn't one on the other side, just on this side. So when we're focusing them to our eyes, we want to start off by focusing our left eye, which uses the main barrel screw here to do that. And then we use this diopter to set the right eye, and most binoculars of any quality have these. And then once we get it set, there's a little dial under here with marks on it. Okay, and so you can actually see where that diopter is set for your eye. And if somebody else uses binoculars and they change it, you can just put it right back and you're good to go. So the way we do that, we don't want to close one eye and look through, because then when we go to open the eye back up, it can be a little bit distorted and change your vision for just a second. So I recommend, use your hand to cover, whichever barrel you're doing, and keep your eyes open. That way you're only seeing through one. Or in my case, I've got these nice little cups that I can cover them with. So I'm going to start off, I'm going to pick something out there at a little bit of a distance to focus on. I prefer to use like a road sign, a license plate on a vehicle, something like that that actually has numbers or letters that you can read, because you can really see then whether you're in focus or not. So in this case, I'm going to cover the right barrel. I'm going to look through the binoculars, and I'm going to move that center dial. You see the center dial here. I'm going to move that until that license plate number I'm looking at comes completely into focus. Then I'm going to change that, and I'm going to cover the left eye. Now I'm going to use that little diopter dial I was telling you about, okay? And I'm going to turn that while I'm looking through with both eyes open until the right eye comes into focus, looking at that exact same object. Now, once I get both of them into focus like that, from that point forward, you just use the center dial and it keeps both eyes in focus. All right, so that's how you use binoculars. A lot of people just grab and go out there and they start looking. They're going, "Oh, why is it things aren't focused?" And oftentimes that's because they haven't set that each eye separately. All right, so let's get into a little bit of the actual bird ID. We're going to talk about some of the birds we actually have seen at Camp Canopy, and next year, if you come out there, you might get a chance to see and hear these birds. So I'm going to share my screen with you. It might take me just a second here to get this set up. Hopefully, it won't take me too long. Not too technologically challenged, but occasionally. All right, so here we are. So calling this today the birds of Camp Canopy, and again, we're going to kind of go through some of these. So we'll start off. Well, first of all, say here, the photos are all photos by myself, and the bird calls that we're listening to come from the Ohio Division of Wildlife. They have these out on CD, and they were provided to us by Marnie Tichnell, who some of you know is one of our co-directors of Camp Canopy. So we're going to start off with the cardinal. So this is one of the three really red birds that we have in Ohio. One of the distinctions with the cardinal, and this is a very common bird, in fact, it's our state bird, is it has the very large beak and the dark face around, the dark ring around the face. Now this is the male. The female is a lighter color, but looks much like this. So it's got that dark face. It also has a crest on the back of its, crest of feathers on the back of its head. So let me play the call for you. So as you can see there, the cardinal makes, 3 or 4 different calls, but they're very loud, they're very sharp. So you'll hear that quite a bit. So again, we're going to look at at least one more of the red birds that we have in Ohio. But when you're looking at this, the cardinal, it just has that one black ring around its face and the crest on the top of its head. That'll be different from any of the other red birds that we'll see. Here's just another picture. You can see that black face ring very distinctively. And no, I didn't take this one out at Camp Canopy because I wasn't out there in the wintertime. So moving on to another one of the really beautifully colored birds is our Baltimore Oriole. And the Baltimore Oriole, we hear it a lot at camp. They're usually way up high in the trees, especially around the dormitories and the cafeteria and stuff. But sometimes they come down to where we can actually see them. They're a beautiful bird. Orange chest, a little bit of orange on the wings, orange under the tail, with the black head and some black and white wing stripes. So let's listen to it. So again, this is one of those that oftentimes I'll hear, and that'll, because it's got a very distinct, loud call. So I'll hear that call, and then I'll stop and start looking for it with the binoculars and eventually find where they're at. And one of the unique things about the Orioles, they build a nest that looks like a sack, oftentimes using string and webs and different things, and they make a very sack-like nest that hangs from the tree branch. This is just another picture of it. You also can see it has a very sharp bill, very pointed, very sharp bill. Beautiful, beautiful bird. Moving on to one of our other red birds, and this is one of the most beautiful birds. If you ever get a chance to see a scarlet tanager, this is one of the most beautiful birds you'll ever see. They're very brilliant red with the jet black wings, and this is an adult male. The females are a much lighter color than this, but anyway, these are a gorgeous bird. I'll play the sound for you on them. We see these more up at the top of the hill behind camp, up near the openings up there. Let's listen to Scarlet Tanager. So the scarlet tanager's voice is very raspy, so it oftentimes sounds like a robin, a regular, common American robin, but instead of being clear, it's very raspy, and then it has that pit to, which is a dead giveaway that's scarlet tanager. And this is just another picture of a scarlet tanager up in the woods. Again, one of our most beautiful birds. Moving on to a woodland bird, we have several thrushes that come through Ohio, but the one that hangs around the most during the summer is the wood thrush. And the wood thrush is identified by the light brown tan back and wings, and then the very dark spotted spots on a white chest and breast area there. And I'm going to play the song for you. This is one of the most beautiful songs you'll ever hear. You'll hear these in the morning, early morning, and in the evenings. Play that for you. Again, one of the most beautiful wood sounds you'll ever hear. And this is the backside of the wood thrush here, where you can actually see that kind of tan back of the head and back and wing area. Again, there are a few other thrushes. One of the other unique things with the thrushes you heard in that voice, sometimes it sounded like there was two different sounds coming out at once. So just like our sound box in our throats, we can make one sound like I am talking. Thrushes have the ability to produce two sounds at once. So some of their calls are really, really interesting. Okay, moving on. We do have a couple of different owls that we have seen out at Camp Canopy. This is the larger of the two we've seen out there. This is a barred owl, and the barred owl is a very beautiful owl. You see the facial disc around the face looks like a heart, and it's got deep, dark, black eyes, really haunting eyes on that. And of course, it's called the barred owl because of those brown bars on its chest. Now they have a very unique call, and you'll hear these more than you'll see them, but you might hear them in the evenings out there. And their sound or their call, people will say it sounds like they're saying, "Who cooks for you? Who cooks for you all?" And I'll play that for you here so you can pick up on that. So the last part of that sound was a couple of them doing kind of a caterwauling, as they call it. And I've had that happen very loudly right outside my bedroom window, and the summer was open. And 3 o'clock in the morning when that starts up, you think there's a bunch of chimpanzees out in the yard fighting. But anyway, let me show you another picture here. So here's a good one of another barred owl just sitting back in the woods there. Again, the barring is quite easy to see. And this is a bird that's about the size of a bigger than a crow, thicker than a crow, but about that same length, maybe close to a red-tailed hawk size. Now here's one you'll see around camp all the time, and that's the barn swallows. There's actually 2 or 3 different kinds of swallows we'll see out there, but the barn swallow is the predominant one. They nest all around the dining hall area there. In fact, before they redid the roof of the porch, they used to nest right up under the roof of the porch of the dining hall, and they were just all over the place there. Beautiful bird. These are females. You can tell that by the lighter chest area. The males have a much darker rust-colored chest. You can see the very long tail on that one on the bottom, and that's another one of the distinguishing characteristics of the barn swallow. I'll show you another picture here after I play the sound. It shows a male. So their call is just a bunch of little chirps and chips. In that case, quite a few of them call at the same time there. One of the good things about the barn swallows, and here's a picture of a male, is that they love to eat insects. So if you have a lot of swallows around, you probably don't have a mosquito problem. But we don't usually have a mosquito problem out at camp because of the number of barn swallows. They eat them off the fly. So I told you there was a couple different kinds of owls that we see out there. So here's the second one. And this is the eastern screech owl. Now, the eastern screech owl is very small, probably only 5 or 6 inches in height. Interesting thing about the eastern screech owl is there's two color phases. There's a gray phase, or what we call a gray morph, and there's also a red morph. So I've got a picture of both of them here, and I've also got the sound, and it's a very interesting call that the screech owl, and again, you don't see these real often, but you might hear them at night. So the first part of that call sounds like a little bouncing ball of some sort, and the second part almost sounds like a distressed horse whinny. But anyway, it's a very beautiful little bird. Here's the red morph of eastern screech owl, and you can tell he's just a little ball of feathers there. And again, these are mostly in the woods. You'll sometimes see people put up nest boxes for the screech owls, and they will use them. A lot of places up around Lake Erie, you go to Maumee Bay, and some of those places around the boardwalks, they have nest boxes up there, and you'll see little screech owls in those. So another one of our regular visitors to camp is the great blue heron. Got a picture of it flying here because I wanted to show you that even though the great blue heron has a really long neck, and you'll see that in the next photo, usually when they fly, they pull that neck in, but the legs stick straight out. Now, there are a couple of other birds that you might see in Ohio, one being the sandhill crane. That's the same size, and these are a big bird. They've got about a 7-foot wingspan. But when they fly, their neck is completely stretched out as well as their legs. So they look completely different in flight than what a great blue heron does here. The great blue heron also sounds like a pterodactyl, I think. Those calls are really loud when you're actually out there in nature and it's a quiet place, and all of a sudden you spook one up and he starts screaming at you like that. But here's a picture of one standing. Again, very beautiful bird, very long neck, but they scrunch it all up when they're flying. And these birds, eat frogs and little fish, and you'll see them standing perfectly still beside the water, usually for a long time before they stab something with their big, powerful beaks. So again, this is the great blue heron. Now I'll go from the biggest bird in our group there to the littlest one. So there's a lot of little, what we call warblers. This is the hooded warbler, and this is a deep woods bird. And again, we'll hear it more than we'll see it. But if we do hear it, then we can stop and look around for it and maybe get the opportunity to look at it. A lot of these little warblers that are only 3 or 4 inches long, very beautiful birds, but without the use of binoculars, very seldom are we going to get to see the beauty of these little birds. So let's listen to the hooded warbler. So another picture here showing the backside of the hooded warbler. Of course, you can see why it's called a hood, because it's got that black hood around its face. But interesting thing, the reason I put this photograph up here is if you do any type of nature photography, you find out that this happens a lot, where you think you've got a great opportunity for a picture, and then there's always one stick in the way, one leaf in the way, one blade of grass in the way. Just like here, if I could just clip off that one little stick that's in front of his face, this would be almost a perfect picture. But hey, that's what you get when you're out there. Mother Nature plays by her rules and not ours. But again, this is the hooded warbler, beautiful, tiny little bird. Then we go to another one of our big ones here, the Canada goose. They're down on the lake all the time. They leave their droppings around the beach. You have to watch out for that. And if we get a whole flock of these, they can be kind of annoying. We'll listen to the sound of it here. And most of you, I'm sure, have seen Canada geese. They're a very, very common bird, but when I was your age growing up, we were lucky to ever see one. There weren't any or very few here in Ohio. It's been a great reintroductory effort to get them back into Ohio. And these birds fly in a V formation when they're flying to break the wind for the ones behind them. And so when I was your age growing up, if I heard, geese in the late evening, I'd go outside and look up just to see if I could see a V of them flying through the sky, because it was extremely rare. And of course, this time of year, you might see a pair of geese out there with their little ducklings following around. They're very cute, and they'll have big broods. Sometimes they'll have 10 to 12 of them following them around. A few more here to show you here. There's several different woodpeckers that we might see at camp, but the biggest one is the pileated or pileated woodpecker, however you want to pronounce that. And this is a crow-sized woodpecker. It's the largest woodpecker we have in the United States. Very large. It has the red crest on the back, black and white wings. When they're flying, you see those black and white wing stripes. And this thing makes holes in the tree, big oval-shaped holes. So if you see a 4 to 6 inch oval-shaped hole that's been carved out of a tree, it's been by a pileated woodpecker. And when you hear the sound, you understand where the cartoon Woody Woodpecker got its sound from. Almost sounds like he's laughing at us, doesn't it? But here's just another picture. Again, these are a big, beautiful woodpecker. If we're fortunate enough to see those, it really stands out, that big red crest on the back of the head. Just a couple more here then. This one here is obviously the bald eagle, the national bird, our national symbol. And a couple of interesting things here. It's a very large bird. They can stand almost 3 feet tall, 7-foot wingspan, and we do see them down on the lake once in a while. I don't know of any nests there yet, but there's now over 700 nests of bald eagles in Ohio, so more than likely there'll be one there at Leesville Lake if there isn't right now. And now they have a very distinctive sound, but it's not the sound you hear on television where they show an eagle swooping through in this big long scream, shrieking scream. That's usually a red-tailed hawk sound that they use. So let me show you what what an eagle sounds like. Not nearly as impressive as that big long scream you hear on television, which again isn't the bald eagle. That is the typical calls of bald eagles. Now, one other interesting thing: most of the birds that we were showing, not only in most cases, the adults and the immature birds look very, very similar, especially within the first year. But a bald eagle is different from that. So this next picture I'm going to show you, this next slide, this is an immature bald eagle. This one's probably only a year old, maybe going on 2, because I'm starting to see a little bit of white up around its head. But it takes 4 to 5 years for a bald eagle to actually get its full white head and tail. So oftentimes people will see a big, large brown bird, and they'll have different colors on its chest and wings. They can have some light white markings. They can be all dark. It can be a lot of different colors. And they may not realize they're looking at a bald eagle. They might think it's a turkey vulture or something else like that. But if you see that big, large hooked beak and the big, bright yellow talons on a bird like this, you can be pretty certain that it's a bald eagle. So the last one we've got here for today is the common loon. Now, it's called the common loon, but it's not so common in Ohio, but we do see them here, and we have seen one out on Leesville Lake there at Camp Canopy when we were on a boat trip one evening. And so the common loon, we'll take a look at a couple pictures here. Here's one with showing 2 of them. You see the black speckling, black and white speckling on their back. You see that dark ring around their neck with the white stripes, black and white stripes. Very beautiful bird. They ride very low in the water, have a very thick, heavy bill, and they dive under the water to catch the fish and stuff that they eat. So this one here, you can see he's either got a little color trouble going on there around his face and beak, or else he's been down the mud on the bottom trying to catch something down there. So, but one of the things I've always thought of as I finish off the presentation here is The loon has a very unique haunting call. And for those of you that know what I'm talking about, if we had the campfire out at Bluegill Rock right there on the edge of the lake, and Super Dave was just getting ready to play his guitar or had just finished up, if we could just have the call of the loon in the background. Anyway, thought it would just be nice to have that as a finish to our campfire some year. Maybe it'll happen. So guys, that's all we're going to have for today. Just kind of wanted to give you a kind of an introductory you know thing here on bird watching, bird identification. If you want to stay tuned here this summer, we're going to have put some more of these out there, and they'll cover different topics. I'm probably going to do one covering a lot of the warblers, which are the beautiful little birds like the hooded warbler we showed. I'll probably do one on raptors, some of the rare visitors to Ohio. So we often get birds that come into Ohio that aren't supposed to be here. And I've got a collection of pictures I've taken around Ohio of birds that have strayed off course, and maybe they're supposed to be up in the Arctic, or maybe they're supposed to be in Africa, or over in the United Kingdom or something. So anyway, we'll have some different things like that. Probably do one on shorebirds, maybe even on waterfowl, all the beautiful ducks and stuff we have. So I want to thank you for joining us today, and hope we can make it out and have a real camp next year, and look forward to seeing all of you there. And again, if you want to look for more of these to show up uh, on our Camp Canopy Facebook later this summer, we should have some more information for you here on birding. Thanks, guys.